Hello, my name is Davis Reganol, and this is my project for sociology. This is my Georgia ID, or Georgia Southern ID, and this is my license. Okay. Sociology is the scientific and systematic study of groups and group interactions, societies and social interactions, from small and personal groups to very large groups. A group of people who live in a defined geographic area, who interact with one another, and who share a common culture is what sociologists call a society. It studies anywhere from individuals in small groups to a society. Personal experiences with sociology. Sociology is something I've learned the significance of in my personal life. Sociology helps tell me what groups I like to surround myself with and how I interact with in different situations. A personal experience of this was shown to me when I experienced COVID this summer. I was isolated from my friends and family and had to stay in my basement for a month. I still experienced symptoms the entire time and I was still testing positive. My friend group did not want to risk getting it, and my family also didn't want to either. Now, seeing how sociology works and how this disease is perceived by people, it tells me really how people act. This is why I chose to be isolated and why I did not want to put other people at risk. Social forces are a social action or change by a member in society. This is shown in the example when explaining how my friends and family are having to stay 6 feet apart from me and how it helped me keeping my isolation. My parents giving me medicine is something that I benefited from these social forces. Sociological imaginations. Sociological imaginations is an awareness of the relationship between a person's behavior and experience and the wider culture that shape the person's choices and perceptions. It's a way of seeing our own and other people's behaviors in relationships to history and social structures. An example of this is how sociological imagination can be applied to help you better understand the impact of sociology in my life would be in a lot of different situations. This helps explain how people in different cultures are raised and how they are taught can be different from mine. When I am home, I act and how I treat my parents is very different from when I'm not at home and when I'm with my friends. This is an example of how sociological imagination is used in the sociology aspect of my life. Sociologists working from micro-level study small groups and individual interactions, while those using macro-level analysis look at trends between large groups and societies. An example that I agree with from the text is how I talk to my friends in small groups rather than on social media or while being recorded. This shows how the relationships between individuals and how they form a society on how others perceive yourself. Individuals at the micro level. An example of this is symbolic interactionism. That is the sociological perspective that is most concerned with face-to-face interactions and cultural meanings behind members of society. This is explaining how at micro level, how you and your friends perceive words and phrases rather than society as a whole. My friends and family have a huge role in what I say. Inside jokes and humor is something I share a lot with my friends, and what I think is right or wrong. Symbolic interactionism is a sociological theory that really helps explain the relationships between an individual and a society. This method of analyzing groups takes a micro-level view. Instead of studying the big picture, these researchers look at day-to-day interactions of groups. When looking at the big picture, it looks at society as a whole, which shows their relationships. Macro level of a society. An agent of socialization is a good example of macro level. In the text, it explains the social groups often provide the first experiences of socialization. Families and later peer groups communicate expectations and reinforce norms. People first learn to use the tangible objects of material culture in these settings, as well as being introduced to the beliefs and values of society. This shows how, in my personal experience, my family helped shape my individual behavior. My dad being very strict and disciplining me helped shape me into the person I am today. Sociological theory. Researching in sociological theories greatly impact your view on your understanding on individuals and society. Structural functionism, conflict theory, and symbolic interactionism all greatly describe your relationships between individualism and a society. This research can help you in the telling their relationships by showing their level of analysis and what they focus on. Each of these cover a major focus group in either micro or macro. The sociological theory can help in a great way in understanding the relationship between an individual and a society. This is shown by explaining that individuals make up a society. Symbolic interactionism is a sociological theory that really helps explain the relationship between an individual and a society. This method of analyzing groups takes a micro level view. Instead of studying the big picture, these researchers look at the day-to-day interactions of groups. When looking at the big picture, it looks at society as a whole, which shows their relationship. Methodology. Qualitative method of research can better explain the relationships of individuals and society. The book states, studies that use the symbolic interactionist perceptive are most likely to use qualitative research methods such as in-depth interviews or participant observations because they seek to understand the symbolic worlds in which research subjects live. They go into more depth in their research, and their study is in their language to give a better understanding in their words. I would use qualitative because it is hard to understand what someone else's meaning behind other words that are translated. Also, it is more precise and in-depth in their research.